everybody? Welcome back to another Philosophy Odyssey live stream. So, see, no one's hopped on, but that's okay. I'm gonna do a little, I don't know if you can hear it. I have the amp. I'll try to get it close to you. So you can hear it a little better. If anybody's still there. What song is that? Strange Day. The Cure. What song was that? Joy Division. She's Lost Control. Holy shit, you got it. So that one. Pretty good shit. I gotta say, Joy Division, one of the best post-punk bands out there, but I would say that Unknown Pleasures and Closer are pretty much neck on neck, you know what I mean? But I do think that Closer is their peak. I think that's the best for Joy Division. I do think as an album overall, it is a step above Unknown Pleasures, just by a slight hair, you know what I mean? Just a slight hair. Closer's is slightly above Unknown Pleasures. And I try to be a little different, and I have the Joy Division Closer shirt, because most people have the Unknown Pleasure shirt, but I'm like, yo, get the Closer shirt. And also the new Chan themes on this album. Oh my gosh, I could talk about that forever. The new Chan themes on the Joy Division Closer. What's up? We got one viewer in here. I just did a little bass biddle before the philosophy stepped in, trying to see if anybody's actually going to step in and watch me philosophize by myself. Nope, dipped out. But that's okay. Even if nobody joins, I'll still go through the whole thing. I thought I'd just do it raw in the garage. No need for some green screen setup or whatever, since we're just doing a little book reading. You know, I thought I'd just do it raw. Give it to you raw, give it to you straight. No need for any green screen. But in the future, I might do a green screen thing. I don't know. But I like to remix these books. That's pretty much what it is. And also, what's so cool? Okay. What's so cool about Joy Division Closer, is that you get a little bit of the New Order sound to it. More of the electronic, new wave sound you'll get in there. A little dose of it. I think you'll get it on the album. So you can hear a little bit of New Order coming closer with this album, which I think is pretty cool. You're getting closer to the New Order. I'd say a good example of that would be like Isolation. More of the synthesizers in there. That would utilize some New Order. All right. So we're gonna hop right into some of the most intense philosophy you will ever hear in your entire life. And I went through all that shit like it was nothing. That's right. I went through all that shit, so you don't have to. But actually, you're gonna have to if you sit through this live stream. You're gonna have to. We're gonna kick it off with C.S. Lewis. All right. And so to students, listens better through the rest of the book, so I'm just gonna read it. There are going to be a few add-ons for me, but it's mostly just going to be me remixing the books. This is going to be basically a book remix, stirring the pot of the philosophy of the politics and religion. We're getting right into politics and religion, my friends. Just keep in mind that this is controversial territory. We're stepping in the controversial territory, my friends. But keep in mind throughout the whole discussion, and we'll be good, right? Hooting and hollering. Sometimes I hoot and holler, especially when I think of Jesus. Jesus is that hog killer. Oh my gosh, when I think of Jesus as that hog killer, I go Christ mode on. You know how Christ is with some people. Fuck you, screw you, you're the worst, you're shit, holy shit. If you know Christ, holy shit. That's how Jesus is with some people. If you get on this nasty side. So sometimes Christ will go Christ mode on Christ when I'm by myself and it's the most intense shit ever. Ever. And I have to go through this song. So I'm like, okay, here's Christ about to go Christ mode on Jesus, what he did to those pigs. Hey, Jesus, screw you for what you did to those innocent pigs. Holy shit. And then he starts rebuking himself. Holy shit, that's just epic as fuck. Holy shit. Don't be that serious. I really do have those ones. Just like Christ is like a Christ mode on Jesus for this shit. You know, Christ that I want Christ to be. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I have this vision of Christ, right? This is what I want Christ to be. The Christ of the Gospels. Holy shit. It seems like he's a pig killer. But at the same time, let's think about that fig tree. Before we get into this, let's think about Jesus a little bit. So let's think about that fig tree. What if it was a metaphor for the money changers? You know what I mean? The fig tree has nothing but money. No fruit. No fruit. The money changers have nothing but money, no fruit. And when your money doesn't produce any fruit, we don't need your money. We don't need your fruit. Since your fruit is fruitless, just like the money changers works. So just wither the tree, wither the table. Don't wither the whole second temple, right? Although, I do have the thought, what if that was the whole second temple? Like, all right, second temple. Go down. Like, oh my God, you know, like you could really go crazy with some of these Christ thoughts. And there are interpretations of Jesus that he is crazy. Take down the second temple. That's when Christ goes burst in mode on you. And I was like, oh, take down the whole second temple. Don't need that shit. Holy shit. No, that's quite the thought, isn't it? Oh, screw the second temple. Wither it all. Holy shit. That's got the crazy thought. So so the fig tree, it even has a cleansing on the temple at the same time when Jesus withered this fig tree. So it's not a stupid parallel to make. Although when I speak to Christians about this, and even non-Christians, they say that fig tree was not a metaphor. There's some Christians out there do, mostly myself, because I'm the one having these thoughts. The fig tree was the money changers. That's my interpretation to save Jesus from being an asshole. And also, when it comes to the pigs, they were Romans, right? They were the evil Romans, right, at the time. Just like sheep are used for metaphor. Right? Sheep are used as a metaphor. This is for the people with faith. If you got faith in Jesus, this is how you make Jesus not asshole. So this is Jesus we need to be looking up to if this is real Jesus. Those pigs were evil Romans and they deserved it, right? They were not innocent. They were not innocent. They deserved what got coming to them. But the only problem is whenever I have that thought, even with the fig tree, I'm just like, now, what if I'm the evil one? What if I'm the one throwing these accusations at Jesus, throwing these false claims at Jesus? When in reality, those pigs were innocent. Those pigs were Christ's body. You know what I mean? We're all Christ's body. How dare you do that to Jesus Christ? That's another thought I have. How dare you do that to Jesus Christ? The pigs could have been Jesus Christ. The pigs could have been Christians. You know what I mean? There's the shepherd. There's the flock. There are the Son of Man with his rod. There's the pigs, the crowd. And then all of a sudden, Christians get fucking decked. You know what I mean? That's another thought I have. There's a lot you can say about that pig tree incident. But what's the most likely interpretation? Unfortunately, I do think that Christ is an a-hole interpretation makes the most sense. But I try to save it, you know what I mean? Just like apologists, I try to be like, actually, Jesus, this is the good Jesus. This is the bad Jesus. And I show it to people. I'm just like, here's the good Jesus. Here's the bad Jesus. the bad Jesus is most likely the one that's biblical. But that's what gets me controversy. It's just like, no, the bad Jesus is not the one that's biblical. That's the one that's biblical, the one you're thinking of, the one that curses those evil Romans, the one that sees right through the deception. You know, a fig leaf on Cambridge sees right through the deception. Sees right through it. All he has to do is say it, and he sees through that deception. You know what I mean? That's the good Jesus. Now, when it comes to the shit Jesus that needs to get the fuck out of here, that's the Jesus that curses innocent fig trees. That's the Jesus that kills innocent pigs, and that's the Jesus I deny. Now, I would see no reason to deny the Jesus that just fucks deception up, you know, gets rid of the deception. I would see no problem with the Jesus that just fucks shit up. It's like a punk would, you know what I mean? But I do have a problem with the Jesus that fucks shit up, like an innocent pig killer would, you know what I mean? That's not punk. Having disrespect for nature, that's not punk either. So these are the thoughts that we have. Was Jesus a true punk? Or was Jesus a poser? I'll leave that to the audience to decide. Personally, I think that Jesus might have been fake. Because I read the Bible, and that's how the Bible spoke to me. Jesus was an imposter. You heard innocent swine, you curse innocent trees. But then whenever I say that, I'm just like, now I'm cursing the pigs. You know what I mean? Jesus is a pig. Now I'm cursing the pig. Now I'm telling the fig tree to wither again. I always have those thoughts. And that's why the argument is so intense, because it's a very religious thought. So, got the Pepsi here, the suicidal tendencies, and the water here. What we can call that? What we can call the water. So, the Pepsi, that's the suicidal tendencies, if you know that song. The water, we'll call that, I'm the piggy going, oh yeah, strong in the water. Yeah, that's right. Suicidal tendencies as well. Let's start mere Christianity, shall we? Enough of that blabbering. In God, you come up against something which is in every respect immeasurably superior to yourself. Unless you know God is that, and therefore to yourself is nothing in comparison, you do not know God at all. As long as you are proud, you cannot know God. A proud man is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. Above all, I shall then be able to continue my search into true and false knowledge, as in this world, so also in the next. And I shall find out who is wise and who pretends to be wise and is not. What would not a man give my judges to be able to examine the leader of the great Trojan expedition, or Odysseus, or Sisyphus, or numberless others, men and women too? What infinite delight would there be in conversing with them and asking them questions? In another world, they did not put a man to death for asking questions, assuredly not. For besides being hampered them are in other ways, they will be immortal, if what we are told is true. And you too, my judges, must regard death hopefully, and must know with certainty that no evil can happen to a good man, either in life or after death. He and his are not neglected by the gods, nor has my own approach again happened by mere chance. But I see clearly that the time had arrived, when it was better for me to die and be released from trouble. That is why the oracle gave me no sign. For the same reason also, I'm not angry with my condemners or with my accusers. They have done me no harm. Although they did not mean to do me any good. And for this I may blame them. Still I have a favor to ask of them. When my sons are grown up, I would ask you, my friends, to punish them. And I would have you trouble them as I have troubled you, if they seem to care about riches, or anything more than about virtue, or if they pretend to be something when they're really nothing. Then reprove them then reprove them as I have reproved you for not caring for what they ought and for thinking that they're something when they're really nothing. And if you do this, both I and my sons will have received justice at your hands. The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways, I to die and you to live. Which is better? God only knows. Give up yourself, and you will find your real self. Lose your life, and you will save it. Submit to death. Death of your ambitions and favorite wishes every day, and death of your whole body and the end. Submit with every fiber of your being, and you will find eternal life. Keep back nothing. Nothing that you have not given away will be really yours. Nothing in you that has not died will ever be raised from the dead. Look for yourself, and you will find in the long run only hatred, loneliness, despair, rage, ruin, and decay. But look for Christ, and you will find him, but look for Christ, and you will find him, and with him everything else through an end. The end. How we should behave to tyrants. If a man possesses any superiority, or thinks that he does when he does not, such a man, if he is uninstructed, will of necessity be puffed up through it. For instance, the tyrant says, I am master of all, and what can you do for me? Can you give me desire which shall have no hindrance? How can you? Have you the infallible power of avoiding what you would avoid? Have you the power of moving toward an object without error? And how do you possess this power? And how do you possess this power? Come when you are in a ship, do you trust to yourself or to the helmsman? And when you are in a chariot, whom do you trust but to the driver? And how is it in all other arts? Just the same. And what then lies your power? All men pay respect to me. I'll also pay respect to my platter, and I wash it and wipe it, and for the sake of my oil flask, I drive a peg into the wall. Or then of these things appear to me? No, they supply some all at once, and for this reason I take care of them. Well, do I not attend to my ass? Do I not wash his feet? Do I not clean him? Do you not know that every man has regard to himself, and to you just the same as he has regard to his ass? Who has regard to you as a man? Show me. Who wishes to become like you? Who imitates you as he imitates Socrates? But I am cut off your head, you say, right? I had forgotten that I must have regard to you as I would to a fever in the ball, and raise an altar to you as there is at Rome an altar to the fever. It will be said that a despot gives his subjects the assurance of civil tranquility. Very well, but what does it profit them if those wars against other powers which result from a despot's ambition, if his insatiable greed and the oppressive demands of his administration cause more desolation than civil strife would cause? What do the people gain of the very condition of civil tranquility is one of the hardships. There's peace in dungeons, but is that enough to make dungeons desirable? The Greeks lived in peace in a cave of Cyclops when in their turn to be devoured. Speak of a man giving himself in return for nothing is to speak of what is absurd, unthinkable. Such an action will be illegitimate, void, if only because no one who did it could be in his right mind. To say the same of a whole people is a conjure up a nation of lunatics, and right cannot rest on madness. Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule. To our strongest drive, the tyrant in us, not only our reason bows, but also our conscience. Socrates' irony an expression of revolt, of resentment of the rabble. Does he, as one of the oppressed, enjoy his own form of ferocity in the ninth thrust of the syllogism? Does he revenge himself in the aristocrats he fascinates? As a dialectician, one is in possession of a pillarless instrument. With its aid, one can play the tyrant. One compromises by conquering. The dialectician leaves it to his opponent to demonstrate he is not an idiot. He enrages, yet at the same time makes helpless. The dialectician devializes his opponent's intellect. What? Is dialectics only a form of revenge in the case of Socrates? I have intimated the way in which Socrates could repel. It is therefore all the more necessary to explain the fact that he exercised fascination, that he discovered a new kind of agate, That he was the first fencing master in it for the aristocratic circles of Athens is one reason. He fascinated because he touched on the agonal instinct of he fascinated because he touched on the agonal instinct of the Hellenes. He introduced a variation to the wrestling matches among the youths and young men. Socrates was also a great erotic. But Socrates divined even more. But Socrates divined even more. He saw behind his aristocratic Athenians. He grasped that his case, the idiosyncrasy of his case, was already no longer exceptional. The same kind of degeneration was everywhere silently preparing itself. The old Athens was coming to an end, and Socrates understood that all the world had need of him. His expedient, his cure, his personal self-preservation. Everywhere the instincts were in anarchy. Everywhere people were but 5 steps from excess. The monstrum in animo was the universal danger. The instincts want to play the tyrant. We must devise a counter-tyrant who is stronger. When that physiognomist had revealed to Socrates what he was, a cave of ever evil lust, the great ironist uttered the phrase that provides the key to him. That is true, he said, but I have become master of them all. How did Socrates become master of himself? His case was, after all, only the extreme case, only the most obvious instance of what at that time begun to be the universal exigency. That no one was any longer master of himself, that the instincts were becoming mutually antagonistic. He exercised fascination as his extreme case. His fear-inspiring ugliness expressed it for every eye to see. He fascinated even more. It goes without saying, as the answer, as the solution, as the apparent cure for this case. If one needs to make a turn of reason, as Socrates did, then there must exist no little danger of something else playing the tyrant. Rationality was at that time divine as a savior. Neither Socrates nor his invalids were free to be rational or not, as they wished. It was de rigueur. It was their last expedient. The fanaticism with which the whole of Greek thought throws itself at rationality betrays a state of emergency. One was in peril. One had only one choice, either to perish or be absurdly rational. The moralism of the Greek philosophers from Plato downwards is pathologically conditioned. Likewise, the estimation of dialectics, reason, equal virtue, equals happiness, means merely one must imitate Socrates and counter the dark desires by producing a permanent daylight, the daylight of reason. One must be prudent, clear, bright at any cost. Every yielding to the instincts and unconsciously is downwards. I have intimated the way in which Socrates exercised fascination. He seemed to be a physician, a savior. Is it necessary to go on a point the error which slain his faith and rationality at any cost? It is self-deception on the part of philosophers and moralists to imagine that by making war on decadence, they therewith elude decadence themselves. This is beyond their powers. What they select as an expedient, as a deliverance, is itself only another expression of decadence. The author's expression, they do not abolish the thing itself. Socrates was a misunderstanding. The entire morality of improvement, the Christian included, has been a misunderstanding. There is just daylight, rationality at any cost. Life, bright, cold, circumspect, conscious, without instinct, in opposition to the instincts, has itself been no more than a form of sickness. Another form of sickness, and by no means a way back to virtue, to health, to happiness. That to combat one's instincts, that is a formula for decadence. As long as life is a sitting, happiness and instinct are one. Did he himself grasp that? The shrewdest of all self-deceivers. Did he at last say that to himself in the wisdom of his courage for death? Socrates wanted to die. It was not Athens. It was he who handed himself the poison cup, who compelled Athens to hand him the poison cup. Socrates is no physician. He said softly to himself, death alone is a physician here. Socrates himself has only been a long time sick. Socrates was an intellectual tragic hero. He hears his death sentence. That instant he dies. Unless you grasp that it requires all the strength of spirit to die, that the hero always dies before his death, you will not come particularly far in your observations on life. So as a hero, Socrates is required to stay calm and at ease, but as an intellectual hero, he's required to have sufficient spiritual strength at the final moment to fulfill himself. So he cannot, like the ordinary tragic hero, concentrate on keeping himself face to face with death. He has to make this latter movement so quickly that in the same instant he is consciously above that conflict and continues to assert himself. Had Socrates been silent in the crisis of death, he would have weakened the effect of his life, aroused the suspicion that the resilience of irony was not in him a primitive strength, but only a game, whose flexibility he had to exploit in the decisive moment, according to an opposite standard, pathetically to sustain himself. Which of Socrates' remarks is to be regarded as a decisive one can be a matter of controversy, since Socrates has been in so many ways poetically volatilized by Plato. I suggest the following: the death sentence I suggest the following: the death sentence is announced to him that instant he dies, and fulfills himself in the famous rejoinder that he was surprised to have been condemned with a majority of 3 votes. He could have found no more ironic jest in some marketplace flippancy or fool's inanity than in this comment on the death sentence, which condemns him from life itself. The trial. The life of Socrates was not dramatic except for its end. His trial for blasphemy ended with the death sentence. This outcome is no accident. A long history led up to it. In the Clouds 423, Aristophanes portrays a Socrates who engages in natural philosophy, concerns himself with celestial phenomena and the things under the earth, denies the traditional gods, for which he substitutes the air and the clouds, teaches the art of arguing a cause even if it is unjust, and takes money for his teaching, all the exact opposite of Socrates as we know him. Since then, new accusations have been raised. He was accused of teaching the young men idleness, of basing criminal doctrines on his interpretation of the poets, of numbering such enemies of the people as Alcibiades and Critias among his students. What gave rise to this astonishingly false picture? As a young man, to be sure, he had concerned himself with natural philosophy and sophism, but above all, he was regarded as a representative of the whole new philosophical movement, which was opposed by public opinion. The people confused a man who had transcended sophism. With sophism itself. For the new method by which he refuted it was intolerable. Socrates questioned unremittingly. He drove his listeners to the basic problems of man, but did not solve them. Confusion, a consciousness of inferiority, and in the demands he raised created anger and hatred. One such reaction is that of Hippias, for he always mocked at others, questioning and examining everybody, and never willing to render an account of yourself. Or state an opinion about anything. Xenophon. And so Socrates in the year 399 was tried on charges of violating the laws, for he does not believe in the gods of our country, of observing a faith in a new kind of demon, and of leading youth astray. Socrates seems to have ignored these accusations for years. As long as he lived, there was no literature in defense of his philosophy. He himself never wrote a line. He had not withdrawn to aristocratic seclusion, nor limited his teaching to a select coterie, but had taught in the streets and marketplace in full public view. Even though he conversed only with individuals, he left the Athenians no peace. The gods, says Socrates, and this is the main point in his defense, had been in to spend his life delving into himself and other men. I shall obey the god rather than you, and while I have life and strength, I shall never cease from the practice of philosophy, exhorting anyone whom I meet and saying to him after my manner, you, my friend, are you not ashamed to care so little about wisdom and truth and the greatest improvement of the soul, which you never regarded heed at all? His defense turns into an attack on the judges. For if you kill me, he declares, you will not easily find another like me, who, if I may use such a ludicrous figure of speech, am a sort of gadfly given to the city by God, always fastening upon you, rousing, persuading, reproaching you. But you may feel out of temper like a person suddenly awakened from sleep and might suddenly strike me dead, and then sleep on for the remainder of your lives. His death more than anything else fashioned an image of Socrates that passed into tradition. It is the martyr of philosophy, victim of a judicial murder at the hands of the Athenian democracy. Yet some have questioned this combination of his judges. The argument is roughly as follows. Socrates might easily have saved himself by offering the right kind of defense, and overwhelming the defiance of human authority, he insulted his judges. He was offered a number of ways out and failed to take advantage of them. He might easily have avoided execution by escaping. He refused to make his peace with the unwritten conventions of the community. He willfully brought about his own death. Hence, it was not a judicial murder, but the judicial suicide. Those who take such a view hold that not the murderer, but the victim was guilty, failed to see that his divine mission to work for the truth forbade Socrates to lose himself in servile acceptance of the prevailing untruth. He was a true martyr, that is to say, a witness. These arguments against the thesis of a judicial murder are ventures to our judgment, not of Socrates, but of the written Socratic texts. Like everything Socrates did, his defense presents dangers to understanding. It is valid only in conjunction with his philosophy. Considered in the abstract, it teaches the reader a false attitude of revolt. Defiance, the wrong kind of affection. Instead of entering into Socrates' fundamental state of mind, the leader himself, by involuntarily regarding Socrates as presumptuous, becomes arrogant and presumptuous himself. He derives pleasure from what he takes for an insult to the people and the judges. He makes the mistake of deriving universal rules from Socrates' apology, of making an abstract model. Only one who thought like Socrates could, without falsehood, act and die like Socrates. Even Plato would not have died like Socrates. Another view is that first presented by Hegel. Athens was right, for it was defending its substance. Socrates was right, for he was ushering in a new era, which presupposed the destruction of that substance. Such absolutizing of history and aesthetic objectification of a tragic conflict seems utterly inappropriate to an event such as Socrates. Of course, each era has its own spirit, and immense transformations have taken place from era to era. But this does not mean that each era has its own absolute justice, and that consequently there are many justices. There are all the eras when something that is valid for men is men. What men do stands before a higher court than that of history. What is true and good, what is false and vile, ought not to be veiled or exercised as tragedy. It is only through Socrates himself that we can reconcile ourselves to his death. He died without defiance or blame. I'm not angry with my condemners or my accusers. This was his last word. He was convinced that for a good man there could be no evil. His cause would not be neglected by the gods. But his next to last words were, "Until you have killed me, that immediately after my departure, punishment will come upon you. There will be more accusers of you than there are now. Accusers are immediately to have restraint. And as they are younger, they will be more inconsiderate with you and more dangerous. If you think that by killing me you can prevent someone from censoring your evil lives, you're mistaken." Can I get a refill there? Or some more water? Some Pepsi? Alright. Trying to think what to get into next. Roger Scott, we'll get into Roger Scott actually. This has what philosophy is. Or we can get straight into the good life. I don't know. Because I could do that into Bertrand Russell on the Christian book. Get into the good life. And bring up resentment. Since we were talking about anger there. Anger might get rid of our accusers. We can do that. Or we can just get into what is philosophy again. I say for this live stream, we get into the good life. Probably that path. I don't know. Which one do I do? That's tricky. Holy shit. That's tricky. I'm going to go with this path, actually. There's a multiple paths you could take. Good life. There have been at different times among different people many varying conceptions of the good life. To some extent, the differences were amenable to argument. This was when men differed as to the means to achieve a given end. Some think that prison is a good way of preventing crime. Others hold that education would be better. A difference of this sort can be a difference of this sort can be decided by sufficient evidence. But some differences cannot be tested in this way. Tolstoy condemned all war. Others have held the life of the soldier to bow for the right to be very noble. Here there was probably involved a real difference as to ends. Those who praise the soldier usually consider the punishment as soon as a good thing in itself. Tolstoy did not think so. On such a matter, no argument is possible. I cannot therefore prove that my view of the good life is right. I can only state my view and hope that as many as possible will agree. My view is this. The good life is one inspired by love. The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. To be free of resentment. To beware of resentment. Who knows how much I ultimately have to think of a long illness for even for that. The problem is not an easy one. You have to experience it from strength as well as from weakness. If anything has to be upheld against illness, against weaknesses, that man's actual sense of salvation. That's to say, his instinct for war and taking up arms has been worn out. We know how to break free from nothingness. We know how to cope with nothingness. We know how to push nothingness away from us. It all hurts. Man and things crowded and all experiences strike too deep. And memory is a festering wound. Illness itself is a form of resentment. In the face of that, sick man has only one great remedy. I call it Russian fatalism. That fatalism without revolt, with which a Russian soldier lies down in the snow at the end of a campaign that was all too hard. To accept nothing further, to take nothing on, nothing in, to cease reacting altogether. The great sense in such fatalism, that isn't always merely the courage to die, for it can be life-saving under deadly circumstances, lies in reducing the metabolism, slowing it down as a form of rule to hibernate. If we take this reasoning a few steps further, we arrive at the factor who sleeps for weeks in a tomb, because we would wear ourselves out much too quickly if we reacted in any way. We don't react at all. That is a principle. And nothing burns us up faster than the emotion of resentment. Anger, morbid sensitivity, the inability to force revenge, the yearning, the thirst for revenge, the concoction of all types of poison. This surely is for the exhausted the most detrimental way to react. It involves a rapid consumption of nervous energy, pathological increase of harmful secretions, for instance, that of bile to the stomach. Resentment is all that has forbidden to the sick man. It is his worst evil. Unfortunately, it is also what he most desires. That was recognized by the profound physician Buddha. His religion, which should rather be called a hygiene system to avoid the confusion with such a wretched thing as Christianity, works because it depends on the conquest of resentment, the free to solve it. This is the first step towards recovery. Animosity is not ended by animosity. The animosity is ended by friendship. Thus begins Buddha's doctrine. This is not the voice of morality, but a physiology. Resentment born of weakness is harmful to no one more than to the weak man himself. Conversely, with a fundamentally rich nature, it is a superfluous emotion, which if kept under control is almost a proof of riches. Those who are just now seriously my philosophy is taking up the fight against the feelings of revenge and rancor, even taking on the doctrine of free will. The fight against Christianity is merely a small part of it. We'll understand why I emphasize my own personal honesty, my instinctive confidence and practicality precise at this point. During my decadent period, I denied myself as these feelings as being harmful. As soon as life offered once again wealth and pride, I denied myself as being beneath me. That Russian fatalism of which I spoke manifested itself in such a way that for years I clung tenaciously to almost unbearable conditions. Locations, dwellings, societies, once fate had sent them my way. It was better than changing them, better than feeling they could be changed, better than rebelling against them. Anyone who interfered with my fatalism, tried forcibly to awaken me, would have been my mortal enemy in those days. In truth, it would have been fatally dangerous every time. Think of yourself as a destiny, not one to be other than you are. That is, under such circumstances, the highest wisdom. Now, war is a different matter altogether. I'm essentially a warrior. To wage war is one of my instincts. Talent for animosity to actually be an enemy. This perhaps presupposes a strong nature. In any case, it is a precondition of every strong nature. It needs resistances. Therefore, it seeks out resistance. Aggressive pathos is just as necessary for strength as resentment and rancor for weakness. Women, for instance, are vengeful. That is through their weakness as much as through their sensitivity to others' distress. The strength of the aggression in a way has its measure in the opposition he requires. Any increase in strength makes itself known when seeking out a mightier opponent, or indeed problem. For philosophers of war, we also do battle with problems. The task is not to overcome opponents at all costs. And only those against whom we must pit all their strength, subtlety, and fighting skill. Opponents are equals. Quality before the enemy. That is the main condition of fight or fair duel. Where you have contempt, you cannot wage war. Where you're in command, where you can see someone beneath you, you should not wage war. The war tactics can be summed up in 4 theorems. Firstly, I only ever engage with the causes that are winnable. If necessary, I wait until they win. Secondly, I only ever engage with causes where we find our allies, where I stand alone, where I compromise only myself. I have never publicly publicly taken a single step which should not compromise me. That is my concern for doing right. Thirdly, I never attack people. Use a person merely as a powerful magnifying glass that allows me to make visible a general but insidious and elusive calamity. In this way, I attack David Strauss, but to put it more plainly, the success of a senile book amongst the culture classes of Germany, thereby catching this culture red-handed. In this way, I attack Wagner, but to put it more plainly, the hypocrisy is somehow refined instinct of our culture, which confuses art with the richness of late with the great. Fourthly, I only ever attack things from which all personal differences are excluded, where any background and bad experience is lacking. On the contrary, to attack is to me a proof of goodwill in certain circumstances, even of gratitude. It is an honor or reward if I associate my name with a matter of person, notwithstanding whether I'm for it or against it. If I wage war on Christianity, I have a right to do so, because it's not going to kill me and it's not going to stop me. The most serious Christians were always favorably disposed towards me. I myself the strictest opponent in Christianity, and far from minding to bear grudges against individuals for what has been the undoing of centuries. Beyond the specific questionability of Greek philosophy from Manuel Levinas, and despite Socrates' testimony in the Apology that human wisdom is worth little or nothing in contrast with the divine wisdom that no mortals possess, there is a sense in which all wisdom is betrayal. Wisdom, even the most compassionate and pacifistic, can be complicit with injustice and violence and excuse suffering. Yet even as wisdom and communication can betray individuals and humanity, they potentially interrupt such complicity by indicating something other than betrayal in the midst of its power. The realities of war and exploitation, and the impossibility of moral purity and fidelity of the virtuous and the wise, are not the conclusion but the point of departure for ethics, according to Levinas. Not the conclusion but the point of departure for ethics, according to Levinas in his preface 2, Totality and Infinity. After the moralism of the righteous self, which abandons others to the imperfections of the world, there remains a possibility of awakening to the other in ethical encounter. This ethical event prior to universal ethical reflection of the moralist and the potential judgment of the virtuous, is the betrayal and complicity of the self who is implicated and thus must answer to the other in some way. This contribution is an investigation of the intersections and tensions between morality and complicity, or ethics and causality, in Levinas and Buddhism, with the aim of interrogating the possibility of a phenomenology of the ethical that neither brackets imminent worldly causal conditioning nor forgets it by transcending or excusing it. The transcendent ethical moment that interrupts the relentless economy of the real is not simply a negation of immanence in the utopia, idealism, or otherworldliness critiqued by thinkers of radical immanence from Friedrich Nietzsche to Gilles Deleuze. Ethical interpolation occurs and is significant only in the context of the unethical, the earthly suffering that afflicts them by sensibility and hunger and thirst, violence and war, birth, sickness, aging, and death. The ethical address happening within the midst of and an antagonism with the violence of being's immanence provokes a difficult task of response to self-transformation. Like all heroes, the Buddha doesn't show the truth itself, he shows the way to true truth. But it's got to be your way, not his. The Buddha can't tell you exactly how to get rid of your particular fears, for example. Different teachers may suggest exercises, but they may not be the ones to work for you. All teacher can do is suggest. He's like a lighthouse that says there are rocks over here, steer clear. There's a channel, however, out there. The big problem of any young person's life is to have models to suggest possibilities. Nietzsche says man is a sick animal. Man is the animal that doesn't know what to do with itself. The mind has many possibilities, but we can live no more than one life. What are we going to do with ourselves? A living myth presents contemporary models. A self, according to my theory, is not any old mathematical point, but an abstraction defined by the myriads of attributions and interpretations, including self-attributions and self-interpretations that have composed the biography of the living body, whose center of narrative gravity it is. As such, it plays a singularly important role in the ongoing cognitive comedy of that living body because of all the things in the environment an active body must make mental models of. That is more crucial than the model the agent has of itself. Back into my favorite conservative, Roger Scruton. Far better than Donald Trump. Donald Trump sucks. And I don't just say that, I give you the evidence for it. This isn't true. There's another feature that characterizes philosophy and distinguishes it from neighboring modes of thought. Not all human thinking is directed towards truth. In art myth, we allow ourselves a free use of fictions. Truth lurks within those fictions, and in the case of myth, a kind of revelation may advance behind the veil of falsehood. Neither art nor myth is assessed on the grounds of a sole truth, and neither is discarded merely because it presents no valid arguments. In philosophy, however, truth is so important in the terms of structure, the discipline. Validity, indeed, is normally defined in terms of truth, a valid argument being one in which the premises could not be true while the conclusion is false. Even those who believe that philosophical questions have no answers assert this to be true, and the discovery that they have no answers is made only by the attempt to find a true one. And the discovery that they have no answers is made only by the attempt to find a true one. We need to interpret our experiences, and frequently make use of fictions in doing so. Sometimes these fictions are obscurely intertwined with truths as in the mysteries of religion. When interpreting the world on purpose is not merely to know it, perhaps not even know it, but to establish and when interpreting the world on purpose is not merely to know it, perhaps not even to know it, but to establish and justify our place within its boundary. There's many things that assist us in this task besides religion: art, storytelling, symbolism, ritual, along with common morality and rules of conduct. When we refer to the philosophy of the Talmud or the philosophy of John Keats, we have this kind of thing in mind. For Ackman says philosophy aimed at abstract truth instead of philosophical in the true sense. Most are a matter of religious, aesthetic, and moral interpretation, whose primary goal is not truth but consolation. There are philosophers who have repudiated the goal of truth. Nietzsche, for example, if you argue that there are no truths, only interpretations. But you can only ask yourself whether what Nietzsche says is true, to realize how paradoxical it is. If it is true, then it's false. So this is also the so-called liar paradox. Likewise, the French philosopher Michael Foucault repeatedly argues that the truth of an epoch has no authority outside the power structure that endorses it. There is no trans-historical truth about the human condition. But again, we should ask ourselves whether that last statement is true. For if it is false. There has arisen among one of those philosophers a certain paradoxism which is certain to put them out of communication with those who are contemporaries, with those who are their contemporaries who are merely modern. A writer who says that there are no truths of all truth is merely relative is asking you not to believe them, so don't. We're gonna end right there today. Hope everyone enjoyed the live stream. Some do peeped in and out. It's staying the whole time, but that's where we're just gonna end today. I thought Roger's gonna be a good place to end that. But next we'll get to demythologizing. the mess that we set up here. So we set up a myth, then we demythologize it. We set up the self, and then we take away the self. That's pretty much what we do in these philosophy live streams, right? But just gonna make it a little short this time. I don't want it to be too long. That's all I'll end today. Have a good night, folks.